Revolutionary greetings, comrades. Sithemba liyaphila lapha likhona. There's one thing that we want to correct, or not to correct, but to clarify, so that we do not run into problems. We all agree that Zimbabwe is in a crisis, in an economic, political crisis. And this crisis, as phakathi kwayo, dates back to colonialism. In 1980, as we have been explaining, that we thought we had dismantled a colonial state, sathola uzibuze, that is black majority rule. And we're hoping ukuthi sasizohlala kuhle. But we find ourselves all over. We find ourselves 45 years after majority rule, perceived majority rule. We then develop this theory, which we want to clarify and correct. I've heard this coming from liberals and the others. People who then tend to blame the masses. You will hear phrases like, no, people of Zimbabwe deserve the leadership they have. That is what we need to clarify and correct. The masses are not wrong. We cannot blame the masses ukuthi bavote njani, the way they would have voted. If there's anyone who should take the blame, it is us, the leadership, not the mass of the people. The masses are never wrong. We also deal with a serious problem of migration, where people migrate mainly to South Africa. We've been watching videos, people crossing Limpopo River, flooding Limpopo River. People coming to South Africa without the necessary documents. People working without the necessary documents. And then the liberals will then blame the masses and say, because you are not fighting your government, you deserve exploitation. You cannot blame someone who is a victim of an oppressive system in Zimbabwe, who then skip the border to come and get a better life for their families. We then blame them. This is the point that we always raise with the government. To say, in South Africa, to say it is wrong in our view to blame the masses. We must blame the authors of the suffering of the masses. There are other people that are privileged, right? People that are privileged, they've got permits to be in South Africa, right? Because one is privileged, he has a permit to be in South Africa, and then he sees the other person on a permit, anganolomntu stupid, and then we begin to blame the masses. We should not blame the masses, because the masses are not wrong. The masses are not the authors of their problems. It is the ruling class that has created this condition. It is the ruling class which we have spent about 2 days explaining this 2030 agenda. It is the ruling class that wants to extend the term limit, or to extend the elections from 2028 to 2030. It is not the masses. Assuming indeed elections do not happen in 2028, then the liberals will once again blame the masses and say, no, you allowed Mnangagwa and the ZANU-PF to amend the constitution. It is wrong because the masses are never wrong. Our duty is to point to the class contradictions that exist in our society. Karl Marx spent time explaining the social classes. And in the main, Karl Marx argued that there are two social classes in the main. I'm not saying there are two social classes, but in the main, there are two social classes. The oppressive class, the class that owns the decisive means of production. It is this class that controls the government. It is this class that does not create employment for young people in Zimbabwe. It is this class that make it difficult for those that want to invest, not to invest and create jobs. We've spoken about the currency question in Zimbabwe. We all follow what the ZIG is doing. I don't know how many times we've changed the currency since 2000. At some point, we're billionaires. But we cannot blame the masses. What we need to do is to educate ourselves, is to educate the masses, and point out this fact. There is no savior that will come and liberate us. That's what we simply must explain. That there is no savior. Akekho umsindisi. Nxa ungumKristu, umsindisi wabuya wazofela izono zabantu wenyuka. Akekho omunye umsindisi ozobuya ezosindisa ekuhluphekeni kwethu eZimbabwe. There is no savior that will come and liberate us. None. So how are we to be liberated if there's no savior? Che Guevara, a great revolutionary, uthi yena, liberators do not exist. As I'm saying that there's no savior, something which Che Guevara said, that liberators do not exist. He said the people shall liberate themselves. So we should not blame the masses, but we must point out this fact that there is no savior that is going to come and liberate us. I mean, I will not liberate anyone. I want to be liberated. I will not liberate anyone. I'm not a savior. But collectively, as a people, we have the power to liberate ourselves. Abanye futhi kuyathiwa controversial, but let's say this fact, so that we educate each other. As I always say, that I learn from you, you learn from me, we learn from each other. At times, we then want to discourage those of us born in Matabele land. To say, no, the Shona people will not allow to be led by Ndebele. Right? We are blaming the Shona people, the mass of the Shona people. These are the masses. Abanye futhi, unfortunately, this Shona answers look but let me conclude my scheme. Then there are others, the Shona elite, who will say will not be led by Mundebere. It is not the masses that are rejecting to be led by Ndebele speaking, but it is a Shona elite who advances this theory. And this is this theory that we must debunk. We have two in the main social classes: the working class and those that own the decisive means of production. Nxa sikhuluma nge-working class, I know people will say ukuthi eZimbabwe kulabantu abasebenzayo. Nxa sikhuluma nge-working class, we are talking of people that are employed. We are talking about people abakokhotama. We are talking of people abavuka besiyatsheketsha. We are talking of people who go every morning to the market to get tomatoes, vegetables to sell in the streets. We are talking of people that do cross-border trade. Here is working class. We are talking of the unemployed. Here is working class. Esikhuluma ngayo. So this working class, it is made up of different ethnic groups. It represents our Zimbabwean nation. It's made up of different ethnic groups. We've spoken about the need to celebrate our diversity, our culture, promote our languages, and so forth. But when we talk of the working class, it is a class that is in the majority against the class that controls the decisive means of production. So therefore, our revolutionary task, Tina Makomadness, is to explain these things to the masses of the people. Ukuthi, we cannot liberate ourselves if we are not united as the working class, irrespective of our ethnic origins. Because the looting class is the one that in the most of cases ferment division amongst the working class. Toilet nasa sichayana sodwa. Nxa sichayana sodwa, bona babizana eplaza ngamnangakho. Bathi mnangakho akabe ngumpresident ngefika ku-2030. Then kube sokusiba yithi futhi. Sithi vele eZimbabwe kakula opposition that can challenge ZANU-PF. Right. So this is why it is critical. Ukuthi whether you are a Shona, we are a Ndebele, we are a Tonga, we are a Nambia, a Kalanga, whatever your ethnicity, if you belong to the working class, we must unite. The ruling class, the one that controls the decisive means of production, is uniting to loot. You saw what happened at Plaza Ngamnangako. Yesterday I was reading, I'm not sure it is authentic, I'm still trying to verify, a motion that is before Parliament that is said to have been it's been moved by Energy Mutoti, the ZANU-PF MP, supported by or seconded by the Triple C, a member of Parliament from Popom, Umoyo. Right? So you can see that they are uniting. Uguti, firstly, one is Shona, who's moving a motion, the Ndebele is supporting the motion. Right? Firstly, that's what we must point out. Secondly, one is a member of ZANU-PF moving a motion. One is a member of the opposition supporting the motion. So you can see unity in action. That's what we call unity in action. It is unity in action to oppress us, the working class. Instead of us then uniting as different ethnic groups, uniting in our different political beliefs, we then allow divisions to happen. And then sokusiba easier ukuthi basikhonge ngihlala senze example ukuthi this pen iyodwa, so I can simply break it, but ngathatha nje abe so abe maneke, it is difficult to break. Kunzima uqamla inyanda. So the point that we are making this morning is that the mass of the people are never wrong. We must not blame the masses of Zimbabwe ukuthi ZANU-PF is in power. We must not blame the masses of the people ukuthi ZANU-PF le Triple C in parliament. They want to extend the lifespan of parliament. We should not listen. We should not listen to those who will then say ukuthi no, Triple C, there are divisions inside the Triple C in parliament. There's a Chabangu Triple C, there's a Jameson Timber Triple C, there's a Professor Oshman Ncube Triple C. It is only the Chabangu Triple C that is doing this. These other Triple C, they are not doing it. They are all Triple C. They are all in parliament. They are going to benefit. That's what is basically happening. Because those, assuming those other said to be two factions of Triple C, who are said not to be supporting this agenda, they will not boycott parliament. They will not, because they benefit. So, as the mass of the people, we should not then listen to those who are saying within the opposition in parliament, let's blame one section or one faction, pick up one faction and declare it the enemy of the people. The question is, as we said in the first presentation, that the parliament of Zimbabwe does not represent the working class and the peasant. So for us others to try and argue, no, kulabanye that are progressive who do not agree with this agenda of 2030, it is misleading. We must reject that with the contempt it deserves. So team, we must understand that we are the victims. Yikho abanye sigcwele South Africa, abantu bengela ama-permit, abantu bebotshwa, abantu be-exploitwa emsebenzini because they are not documented. We are being insulted every day by xenophobia, people who have formed organizations for the purposes of attacking the migrants. We are victims in Zimbabwe. Abanye bathatha land, they are being moved out of that land because they are not ZANU-PF members. Abanye abantwana, they passed their A levels, they are not going to get scholarships because their parents are said to be members of the opposition. Abanye, when fertilizer is being distributed, bought by taxpayers' money, they are not given simply because they are said to be the opposition. We are all victims in one way or the other. So it is important, therefore, that we must then build this unity as the working class. I'm proud of it in Lindebele. Lao are proud, be proud that they are shown up, be proud that they are doing, but we all belong to the working class. And the masses, us as the mass of the people in Zimbabwe, we are being exploited by the ruling class. And we have the power to end this exploitation. And this power that we have to end the exploitation requires us to unite. I was saying to comrades, I'm now saying greater, I was saying to comrades last night when we were having this discussion, 23rd agenda, I was saying there are only two things that will stop the 23rd agenda. The first one, or either of the two, if the people of Zimbabwe, the mass of the people, were to occupy the streets in Zimbabwe, the 23rd agenda will fall flat. We understand that we have not reached that level where we can occupy the streets. And this we cannot blame on the masses. That's the point that I've been making. Now we blame the masses. Why are not occupying the streets? No. It cannot just happen automatically occupying the streets. It needs us to raise the class consciousness of the mass of the people to a level where people will then occupy the streets. And this exploitation will end. The second, I was saying only the military will stop the 23rd agenda if it is in its own interest. If it is not in its, if 23rd agenda is not in the interest of the military, they will do the 2017. But if it is the military, because Zimbabwe is a deep state with a militarist, which is capitalistic and driven or defended by a military, if it is in the interest of the military, 23rd agenda will go through. So unity is power. We must unite, and we must not listen to liberals who want to blame the masses for the crisis that we're in as the people of Zimbabwe. Amandla, comrades.